So today we're talking about AI and are your contracts ready for the services your customers need? I would like to make a couple of observations to start off with. Whether you're involved or not with AI for your customers right now, it's an absolute certainty that your customers are using AI. And so why not step into this space if you have not already? As MSPs, you're very well positioned to do exactly that. You have the skills and the base skills and can readily develop additional skills. You have familiarity with your customers' environments and their teams. And very importantly, you have the relationships and the trust there with your customers. As for those of you who have previously heard me speak, I hope you're aware that, of the strong connection between what you agree with your customers and the success of the services that you provide in terms of being able to manage risk and to reduce revenue leakage, or the other way of putting that, of course, is to increase your revenue and to build a strong and valuable service. So business. So today we're going to do a walkthrough of some of the key ways that MSPs are providing AI services to their customers, and also those that are planning to as well. So we've got MSPs that are already providing these services and MSPs that are planning to, and some that really just want to start being aware of what they could in fact be doing. I'll introduce you to your customer for this session, Top Notch Limited. And we've got a scenario here of what's going on at Top Notch. So they haven't asked you about AI, but they're doing all or some of these types of things. So they may have an AI use policy. It may or may not be well enforced. Their staff are using probably some tools that have been approved for use, but probably also some shadow AI tools as well that they've decided they want to use. They may be putting some commercially sensitive data into the AI tool, maybe also including some personal data, whether or not that's permitted and whether or not permissions have been addressed. Machine learning is something that some of the staff members have not really taken much notice of, that they've got to opt out of machine learning on some of the company approved tools and may not really think about it in terms of tools that they just decide to use. There could be some unmonitored integration of AI tools with their Outlook, with their data folders, and the management team, if they turned their mind to it, they would certainly say they're not really aware of what's going on with their staff's AI usage. So we've got this scenario, which I expect is reasonably common across a lot of SMB businesses today. So what services will you provide Top Notch to assist with their AI use? I've set out 4, which we're going to walk through today. On the left, we've got the existing types of services that MSPs might readily provide in terms of providing support or indeed building that into a managed service and being proactive about that, or stepping into the new range of services that are available to be provided and indeed that your customers want. And that is AI solutions. If they're not already, they're thinking about what tools could we use or what workflows could be automated and how would we even go about beginning to do that. So AI solutions, buying and implementing those could be something you do, or indeed developing agents and getting into licensing and implementing those agents. So if we take the first type of service, and this could come at any time from any of your customers, they raise an AI-related support request. They ask you for support in implementing or setting up an AI tool. It's not something you've provided. It's not necessarily something that you knew they were going to do, but they contact you and ask for support with that. So what is Top Notch assuming in this case? When they tell you about that tool and their intended use of it, and then you help them, that they'll be assuming a whole bunch of things, just as customers always do with their MSP. The responsibility that you take on in that scenario far overreaches what you intend to take on, but certainly is what your customer expect. So for one, they might expect that you condone use of the tool, because otherwise, why would you assist them with it without saying anything? They might assume that if you're providing a managed service to that customer, that they can carry on asking you for support and they won't be charged anything more, and it will be wrapped into the managed service that you're providing. They assume that you'll be telling them proactively about things like data permissions, which they may or may not be aware of, but they're pinning all of this responsibility on you because they've now asked you about this, just in terms of the support request. The AI outputs and activities could be hazardous. They could well pin that onto you and think, well, you've condoned use of the tool, so you condone everything that comes from use of that tool. And also, finally, that they might assume that you're liable if anything goes wrong because you've now got oversight of their use of that tool. So what should you do? Instead of just responding to that support request, get agreement on the basis on which you're providing the support. So pause for a moment, say, yes, you'd be happy to help with that, but confine your support to responding to that request. Now, for that, you will need something ideally in writing. You could modify your existing contract, or you could say, look, I'm just going to send you an AI addendum to cover this type of support request, being the first type of AI support request that you've asked us for. And then you can confine that as being out of scope for their managed service, or you could indeed wrap that AI addendum and reference your managed services agreement. So confining the support to responding to the request, just like you would if it was an ad hoc support request and you indeed provided that sort of support to a customer that didn't have a managed services agreement. So think of it like that, confining that support, clarify in that contract modification or AI addendum that it's their decision to use the tool, that they're acknowledging there's risks involved in that, and indeed that you're not responsible for the outputs or the activities. So something in writing first, either the modification of your existing contract or the AI addendum is a very wise move here. We go on to the next step of extending the managed service and including managed AI support. Now, there's a couple of ways of doing this. You could have, and we're certainly helping MSPs who want that managed AI support to be a separate service from their existing managed service, and others that are building it right into their managed service. So either way is fine, but again, assess first. So just as you would with a managed service doing a site assessment, if you're starting to provide managed AI support, you'll want to do that assessment first, and a note there, make it a chargeable activity. So you're coming in, there's a whole bunch of different work activities that could come into this assessment, identifying the AI tools that are in use, doing a risk assessment on those tools and how they're being used. As I mentioned earlier around the machine learning opt-out, that's one, but there are other areas of risk assessment that that could and should perhaps be done, and provide some guidance on that. So some of even the paid tools are not necessarily that safe to use from a risk perspective, in terms of the risk involved, but also the machine learning that goes on even with some paid tools. If there's an opt-out, good, but assess other elements of the basis on which that AI tool is being provided by the vendor. The AI use policy is something you can have a look at or create if it's not in existence. Some training for the staff around what's in the AI use policy, and just some general provisions in that training around data permissions and not putting sensitive data into AI tools, and that being in line with what that company's policy is in terms of AI use. Obviously, the security review, because the security attack surface broadens with use of AI, and that permissions assessment. So you can take all of those types of items, and I'm sure there's more as well, and incorporate that into your assessment, make that a chargeable activity. Next, going on to how you're going to define your managed service. And as I said, this could be incorporated as part of your existing managed service or a separate managed AI support. The user and access management. So all of the things that will be recurring needs with that AI use by your customers. The incident support related to the AI tools that they're using, the AI usage reviews against the policy. So, that policy is not a once and done, and is also not a once and done in terms of telling people about it and expecting that they will comply with it. So that's an ongoing task right there. The integration maintenance, if the customer is integrating the use of AI tools and allowing it to reach and access data, that requires maintenance and also ongoing assessment of what's actually occurring within the business, and guidance on adoption of new features. We're only at the beginning of AI usage, and that's going to accelerate with a whole lot of new features, products, and so on coming in. So keeping on top of that could be part of your managed service if you can see what's going to be the recurring element and separate out, adoption of new AI tools into the assessment side first. So Top Notch has now moved from, you providing a response to a support request to you now building something into your managed service to cover their AI usage. Let's have a pause here as we are about halfway through the 4 items. We've done the first 2. And what really is the MSP's role? And here you have the opportunity to create your role. So, it's a whole new era. It's a whole new range of opportunities for MSPs. The AI readiness assessments is, part of that. The consulting, which, could be reasonably extensive. And it's really assessing where you want to position yourselves in this range of opportunities for MSPs. I would say here that, there are other types of organisations coming in to the AI space for the SMB world. I was chatting with a friend who's a senior executive in a business the other day, and she said, why would we need an IT company or a managed service provider to help us with this? So they're getting approached by other types of consultants. Many are thinking of doing things themselves. And I think there's a big education piece that can come in here, and you can really support, guide, and help your customers. So Top Notch is now showing more and more interest, and you want to step forward from the managed service situation. And so what does that look like? Well, we're hearing a lot these days about strategic partner and the move for MSPs from trusted advisor to strategic partner. So trusted advisor having been a label that's around for a long time. And from the MSP's perspective, of course, you're the trusted advisor. I think for some MSPs, they're not necessarily having their customers listen to them as trusted advisor. So customers not necessarily taking up recommendations. And I think that's a good place to start, is assessing your situation right now with your customers. And are you indeed the trusted advisor? Do they take up your recommendations? Does it feel like you're really working with them and for them, and that they feel that they have, corresponding obligations in terms of the success of the services that you provide, because it's not a one-way street. As we move more into the AI services, there is the step forward into strategic partner. And there's various ways of looking at this, but I think one clear way is that a strategic partner, you're involved in the strategy of your business, in the strategy of your customer's business as it relates to AI. What that means is understanding where that business wants to go strategically, what they want to achieve with AI, and really at that next level, understanding much more about the commercial realities for your customers' businesses. So when we move into this strategic partner role, it's about implementing AI solutions. It's not about only managed services, although managed services certainly comes into it. Here we're talking about buying and implementing AI solutions and, not building, but buying. So buying, pre-existing agents, implementing them as a solution for your customer. So if that sounds like something that you want to do and you've done some planning work on, have you got the right skills and so on and what that would look like, what do you need to figure out before meeting with Top Notch about this? Now, my first point here is go in as strategic partner. Go in with a plan, go in with a structured offering. So it's not going in with a conversation and letting them tell you what they think they want. It's actually going in and having a plan and using that plan to guide the conversation. So just as with the implementation of any IT system or solution, you're really looking at a phased project. So you're going in with a scoping session first, usually to uncover where are the routine tasks that could be automated with AI, with an AI solution. And, think of these as the quick wins. You might go in and scope something and, have that as a proof of concept to help the customer understand that, you've got the skills, the compliance is all taken care of, the data permissions for that particular task, and they can see the valuable results from that first piece of work. So rather than going in and assessing the whole business for a full AI implementation, choose a piece that, you need to be guided on by the customer, but you're going in and suggesting that that's how you approach this. So that scoping session takes place. But have the next steps ready so you can lead the customer along in that first meeting. So this is how you're going to structure it. After that scoping, there'd be the first workflow that you're going to put in place an AI solution to cover. There's some reselling components. Obviously, there's the implementation project itself once you've figured out and designed what that workflow will look like with AI, and your delivery commitment, not going beyond what's in your control. So, for example, someone with 10 people in their admin team, and they think that 2 of those people are working on a completely routine task that could be automated. You're providing the solution. You're not fully in control of the overall outcome of that. So your delivery commitment can be confined to the delivery of what's agreed rather than the outcome. And we'll talk a little more about outcomes shortly. And certainly that the customer has obligations as well. So as I hope you recognise, there are new types of contracts that are needed because this, aside from MSPs not usually doing strategic integration, big implementation type projects, the elements of this are different and new for AI solutions. So go in as a strategic partner for the customer, go in with a plan, go in with a structured offering, and test that offering outside of your own business to see if it makes sense, to see if it's tight enough. So some offerings that we have, that partners and MSPs have shared with us, are they start off by being too loose And that puts you on the back foot when you then try to tighten them up. So you want to go in with a structured offering that's reasonably tight in terms of how you're going to go about this. And certainly once that scoping session is done, that you're writing up the statement of work or the proposal for that first piece of work very tightly, because indeed it's going to form part of your contract. So the new types of contracts could be a contract for the scoping, could be a contract for the proof of concept, and you could then lead into an agreement that is anticipates and provides for multiple other phases, or indeed you could begin with that type of contract right from the outset. Other topics to consider in relation to buying and implementing AI solutions are, so when I say buying the ready-made agents and tools that you're going to use as part of the solution. Some partners, of course, some MSPs don't have necessarily all the skills to go in and have those business conversations or for other parts of the project. And so to get off to a quick start, you might choose to partner with another organisation to deliver that service. If you do that, it's a good idea to own the customer relationship still. We've seen people coming to us saying, this is how we're going to work. And actually, when we look into it, and usually don't have to look too far, the partner is actually then wanting to own the customer relationship. So especially if you see that as an interim step before you and your team build up the right skills, continue to own that customer relationship. The vendor terms and conditions, there are plenty of new things to look out for in those, and even to be able to vet those or get someone else to help with vetting those vendor terms and conditions to see if your customers indeed want to take on that product once they know the basis on which it's being provided by the vendor. And I'm talking here about machine learning, about security, about ability to opt out, and so on. So a few important things to look out for there. The next two things really go together. And as I mentioned earlier, and as I'm sure you're all aware, the attack surface increases when your customers start using AI. So strengthening up that cybersecurity baseline for customers that are using AI. And the data permissions is a key area where, people may have paid some attention to data permissions, but for a different purpose than when you come into AI. In the AI world, even if your customers are not integrating usage across their data folders, the customers shouldn't want them accessing data that they can then put into AI tools. The intellectual property and inputs and outputs is another interesting one and comes from the vendor terms. And customer awareness of new risks they take on. That needs to be squarely put in front of the customer, because just like with other things, it's actually their risk and you are there to support them with it. The last type of service that MSPs are providing and partners are providing is really the full managed intelligence provider role. Again, new types of contracts are needed. Probably the two key elements that we've not talked about much yet would be the sell and the build and creating new agents. So we'll just step into those two topics next. Firstly, on the sell, the new pricing models. And if you think about, the evolution of where we've got to now with managed service providers, and a lot of managed service providers having grown from the old break-fix model, when managed services came along, partners needed to figure out what was going to work best as a managed service model, and that created the need for new structuring of commercial models for that type of service. Now, with AI solutions, we're seeing that again in terms of new pricing models and new structuring that's needed to provide these solutions successfully. There's been a lot of talk already about outcome-based pricing. As some of you know, I've been in the legal game for a long, long time. And when I worked in a big law firm during the 90s, I quickly got onto the ICT legal work. And in the IT side of things, a lot of that was for big corporate customers. And I had one CIO I worked with wherever he went, and he was very focused on outcome-based pricing. Now, that's from the customer's perspective. I haven't, over the last 30 plus years, seen that coming from the partner side. And indeed, it does come with a lot of caution if you're going to go into outcome-based pricing. So acknowledging objectives is a lot different than committing to outcomes. And if you think about what you might put in a contract, committing to an outcome in a contract leaves you open because the customers play a big part in being able to achieve outcomes. You can't deliver to outcomes on your own. So there's a good way and a risky way to go about outcome-based pricing. Pricing for value, certainly yes. So when things can now happen very quickly, your customers really should be paying for the value rather than the time that it takes. Recognizing the dependencies, as I said, one of the key dependencies is what customers do. And again, that you have no responsibility for the outputs or activities. And I stress that one just in the same way that you can't be 100% responsible, or in fact, not even quite very close to it for cybersecurity. You can't guarantee security, nor can you guarantee or give any responsibility around AI outputs or activities. In terms of developing agents, as we're seeing some partners do, especially those with development expertise from the past, moving into developing agents, the intellectual property ownership, which is not necessarily that familiar to MSPs in your day-to-day work, but becomes a big issue if you're developing agents. Bear in mind that human creativity is required for there to be copyright. So if you were using an AI tool to create an agent without sufficient human endeavor and human creativity, then there could well be no copyright in that agent to be owned because it hasn't been really created by a human. So be aware of that. Creating reusable agents is a good idea. So not catering as to each customer in a custom way, but creating something that's reusable that you can see a use case for across multiple customers. The basis of use is around licensing and having a licensing agreement available. And the development and licensing fees, we've seen some partners already say, well, we're not charging for the development, we're only charging for the licensing. That can be structured differently depending on what it is you're actually building. But if you've got a stack of agents and you are then going to be implementing them and perhaps doing some custom work on top of them to build a somewhat customized agent, there's a development piece there, albeit custom, modification. And then, of course, the licensing. So there's a few quite a few big concepts there for MSPs to get their heads around, and of course that needs to all be covered in the right sorts of contracts. We're on to the last part here with AI solutions and managing and maintaining tasks, manage and maintain tasks. In terms of, we've talked about managed services, but if you're building agents, then there's a new range of maintenance tasks that need to be carefully considered and brought into contracts. Just like if you had a software product and you're doing ongoing support and maintenance of that product. So here we've got the layering in of automated workflows, the vendor relationships, the ongoing integration compatibility, the agent versioning, maintenance, and the security patching. So all of these things are, quite unique to when you start dealing with agents, and certainly if you're building your own agents. So that brings us to the end. Happy to take any questions. I know actually, we're pretty good for time, only 1 minute over by the looks. But very happy to take any questions if there are any. Otherwise, please feel free to book a call, and we're happy to have a discussion with you.